everybody. Good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy and Justin, and sometimes John. Oh my. Yeah, it's quiet. That's because my opening screen is quiet, Pendrake. Thank you for the sub, Grey Wolf. Prime sub. Yes, 10 months. Happy Tuesday. It's kind of a like sleepy Tuesday for me. Like it's one of those mornings, one of those sluggish mornings. Hello. We never need a noise marine. Not ever. Oh, and on that note, well then. Hey, we have a Gnoll though. We don't have a noise marine, we have a Gnoll. Maybe we'll give him a happy face today. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. Just trying to get my little cards sorted out here. Got my fur colors. Oh no, palette! I need my palette. Of course I forgot my palette. Are you guys saying that I have to put some music on while we're waiting for me to get on? Bones complete. No idea. Hello, Bob and Julie. Good morning. It's an old time. Gnoll time. But yeah, let's look at, actually, I saved some pictures. I wonder if I still have them in an easily found location. I have about 60 zillion pictures from the Hawaii Botanical Garden, but that does not help me with Gnolls. Ah, there we go. All right, so we've got some wild dog pictures and some hyena pictures. So we could give our Gnolly a little bit of a reddish mane if we wanted to, or a lighter colored mane. That seems to be what they're kind of about. They've got darker muzzles. That's a one with more washed out Kiri face. So you often see that reddish hue. Not always, but often. Since our Gnoll is a Gnoll and not a hyena, we can depart from that. But I'm definitely seeing that he should have a blacker snout. And then probably there's not a lot of room on the face to do a lot of variation otherwise, though, at 28 millimeter. Unlike at bust size, where you can get more patterns in, often if you try to do that amount of pattern at this scale, it will just kind of run together into a blob and it won't look like anything. So, a returning feature. Ooh, sounds nebulous. Sounds nebulous. Yes. All right. So let's get some. I'm thinking maybe we could go a little bit of reddish with his fur, but I want to be careful because if we go reddish with fur up here, we probably have to throw some red in somewhere else. Probably some reddish orange, which I was already thinking about doing on the sash here. So maybe we'll commit to that and go that way with part of the mane as if he's dyed his mohawk. That could be kind of fun. I could like that. And the ears can go darker. The muzzle needs to go darker. So let's lighten up the face first, and then let's tackle that darker muzzle. Alrighty. So we have our Gnoll pelt and our russet brown. Oh, and our gutter grime. Almost forgot our gutter grime. Gutter grime is what gives our Gnoll his wonderful olivey texture. So let's do that. And then we use a brush full of that with some Gnoll pelts to get our greens up there. And when we think about reds, we'll probably think about something kind of rusty, maybe oxidized red from the new thingy. I'm so precise when I say thingy. Kickstarter. It's gutter grime. That's an olive. It's essentially an olive. I'm going to do a slightly different mix this time. Yeah, greenish brown, but we were bringing it up with Gnoll pelt. And Gnoll pelt and gutter grime are both olive greens. So if I get a little bit too green, I just glaze with my russet brown. But we've always been using these colors. They're all on my card. So 2 of these colors that we're using out of 4, and really Osirian sand is just used in for highlights, but 2 of these colors are olive greens. Because when you have a greenish brown or a brownish green Gnoll, you're going to end up with an olive color. Because olive is a brownish green. But I'm not sure what your question is, Pendrake. Like, I'm not certain if that's what you're asking. I am just mixing up 1 drop of russet brown, 1 drop of gutter grime, 2 drops of Gnoll pelt first. Our arm did go a little more green than brown, but that's fine. That's easy to fix with a glaze. Because if I look at it, I'm like, all right, yeah, that's actually close. What I did down here that I didn't do up here, though, is to shade more with that russet brown. So that's why this isn't looking quite as brown, but it's still in line with what we've got. So, and we still haven't changed that paw. I'm keeping that paw because I want to kind of be able to compare both ways. Make sure I don't get too close to this, make sure I'm sticking closer to that, and then we can finish off that paw at the end. Okay, great. So for our setup, we've got a mixture of gutter grime and russet, a mixture of gutter grime russet with 2 drops of Gnoll pelt, and then Gnoll pelt, which we're going to put a brush full of these other colors into. Hello, SMR. Thanks for that sub. Wow, 16 months. Dang. Right. I was just saying that the hyenas often have a reddish color to their manes. And since we were already considering doing a red-orange down here somewhere, remember we talked about red-orange and like a really dark indigo last week? So that would fit to do a reddish-orange mohawk type of thing on Mr. Gnoll because it repeats those colors. Remember, you always want to repeat colors around the model, especially if you're going to use something distracting and bright. If we did that sash in reddish orange, it would be very bright and distracting compared to his olive skin tone, so it would draw attention away from his face, and that would be a shame. So we would combat that by making the hyena fur mohawk kind of crest reddish. Does that make sense now? It is one way we could actually be in line with hyena coloring and also still use a sash color. That's the most warm thing on the model. But we're going to use some tight detail up here to draw attention to his face too. So, that didn't really work. I ended up with a color that was very much like my other color. I'm going to add a little bit more russet brown to my shadow. Yeah, release the Kraken ink, for sure. But yeah, I mean, here, the thing is, if you look at those hyenas even, and I mean, hyenas are not gnolls, of course, they are actual creatures, but even if the rest of the hyena is kind of a dingy tan, the crest is often reddish brown. And so it's not like just because, don't ever, like, actually this is a good time to talk about this, just because your gnoll has greenish brown fur does not mean the entire gnoll needs to be greenish brown. This is the mistake that I see actually with people painting wolves. It's a gray wolf, they paint it all gray. No, gray wolves have other colors in their fur. Naturally they do. And if you don't put those colors in, your wolf might look wrong. So that's kind of the same thing here. Like, just because you've committed to a particular main color doesn't mean you put no accent colors in the fur. Like, even in natural animals, you can see those kind of shifts in color over the course of the pelt. So never lock yourself in like that if you can help it, because like I said, it can help you balance a model. If you got it stuck in your head that the gnoll is greenish brown and that's it, but then you make this sash red, you've lost out on a chance to balance the composition of the model, of the color. because you're closed-minded. You've closed yourself off to that possibility of making part of the Gnoll's fur actually that color. You could also, yeah, but they're wicked. There's a reason that they were the bad guys in The Lion King. But anyway, you could also think about doing like some tattoos on like his short fur here, or like war paint or something like that to bring that color up. But there is certainly an opening there to use that reddish color to introduce other colors to the fur. Mostly wolves have a lot of brown, often sometimes even reddish color. I mean, it's a different set of genes there. The gene that controls for coat color black is different from the gene that controls for coat color red, brown, red, tan, gold. And in the very, very gray wolves, that red or brown gene is actually a really pale cream, which is why the wolf looks all gray. But you can also have that same gene expressed with a more reddish tan. So you'll see everything across the board on wolves. All right, so now we've got a much better setup. This looks much more like what we were dealing with down here. So let us endeavor. I'm going to actually do some more brown color here, because I think he does need a little bit more brown color up on his arm, and also shading some of the other parts of him. I'm going to add some water though. But yeah, always allow yourself some room to wiggle if you decide you want to change the color on a piece. I mean, always use kind of your rules of color theory. Is this color right for this model, right? And will it work well with the other colors that I'm going to put on it? And that's always something to ask yourself. But I wanted to ask you guys another question. So do you want metallics or non-metallic metals on this? You could go either way on this model. I'm going to block in some browns in the shadows here while you guys think about it. I have one vote for TMM, True Metallics. What do the rest of you think? Put in some browns here. Bring in some more browns over here. Use a little bit of brown in here. Now remember, I'm shading with this brown. I'm trying to keep it subtle. But I am trying to like cover maybe a quarter of the area of some of these muscles with that brown. And that will influence the color of the piece. So it will make that arm look more brown. Now, I will do a glaze just because I want to try it. I'm going to do a glaze. So remember, glazes are add like a brush full of paint into a new well. Grab a big brush full of water. Mix it in. Kind of look at it, see how much it's coloring the side of your palette. This is coloring the side of the palette actually very strongly. So that would shift our green a lot. I don't want that. So I'm going to add another drop of water. I see metallics, metallics, metallics. Brass is really the same as gold, only a little bit more black. You want it, brass is just slightly colder than gold. It tends to be when I say brassy, it's usually means it's cold, and it's colder and doesn't have as much mellow warmth as gold does. So we're getting metallics, metallics, metallics. Pendrake did not specify, and we have an NMM. I'm going to glaze. Now this is more like what we want our glaze to see. See how little that color discolors this edge of the palette? Then that's what you want when you glaze. I've kind of committed to, over the next couple months in my Patreon, doing a series that's kind of for more basics, like just go back to fundamentals, and I will talk about things like this, like building glazes and things. I want to do pretty much one very short video a month on it. I've wanted to do this for a while. I feel like I have, since I have my schedule set for the month, I should have the time this month to do it. All right, so take off some of that. That has colored our fur more brown. I'm going to blow on it a little bit. It's not drying super fast. All right, let's get onto our Gnoll face while we work on this. But yeah, because I get a lot of new people, like a lot of you guys watch my stream all the time, but a lot of my patrons are relatively new painters who don't watch the stream all the time. And so I really want to kind of touch on really fundamental, like first video is going to be on doing a good smooth base coat. I mean, just stuff like that. Stuff like to make a series that, and what I'm going to do with this is you guys get it. Patrons will get it first, but then it's going to go up on YouTube. So essentially, because it's an extra perk and it's not something that the Patreon has as its goal, you guys will just get early access if you're my patron. I'll try to do one a month. That's about all I can commit for at this point with all the things going on. But yes, I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/paintingbig, and Karuniko just linked it, or Quinty just linked it, sorry. Haha, I was reading Karuniko and I said, so we've got metallics, got 2 NMMs. We got 3 metallics and 2 NMMs. But yeah, so if you ever, once I get these guys going, once I have a few of these kind of basics videos up, if you have any newbie painters that you know, you can refer them to that. I'm going to try to keep the videos under 10 minutes. So they'll be short. All right, so I just threw some more brown all over, and I like that a bit more now. It's reading right in line with the foot down here. I actually feel like the foot down here needs even a little bit darker brown and a little bit more of a green highlight to bring it in line. There, that's a little better. All right, excellent. I'm going to bring some of my brown into my green to make it a little less virulent in color. You lost Pendrake? Jeez, Pendrake's like, okay, you're okay with either. Ah! Well, so far metallics are winning, so we have 2 NMMs and 3 metallics. I don't know if anybody else out there has enough oomph in them to offer an opinion this morning, but I am all ears, like our Gnoll. He is almost all ears. I'm still up for votes. I'm waiting to see if anybody else cares. Oh, there's Julie's on. Well, now we've got a tie. Now we've got a tie. Well, that's never any use. All right, I'm going to bring in some highlights here. Let's get that face going on. So again, this fur is very, because it's hyena and it's very closely sculpted. There's not much you can do here except to try to just hit the little bits of fur. And you can use, this is one of those times where, not necessarily dry brushing, but using the side of your brush to kind of pick up the little bits of fur without going down into the cracks is a good idea. I mean, Gnolls do not take real good care of themselves, so this fur is not sculpted to be like super pristine. He's also a pirate, so he probably doesn't, bathe in anything except seawater. His fur is probably not in great shape. We're going to start out doing green on this crust, but I may go back on it once we get the other color in there. So I'm using the side of my brush to kind of just drag it across the surface. I'm using, I dropped some Osirian sand into this color to bring it up a little bit. I'm going to probably brush actually use the side of my brush to get the side of these main bits here. If you do mess up and you have too much paint on your brush and your paint goes down into the cracks, just come back with a little bit of brown and touch it up. And you can also come back with a bit of your brown if you just feel like there's a shadow that needs more emphasis. So if there's like this fur here is kind of clumpy. I got another TMM or an MM. So metallics are winning again. Scurvy Sea Hyena. I feel like I need to push this even a little darker and more brown. I'm just like messing around at this point. Really, this probably would be a good project to use a wet palette for, since I'm mostly just smooshing together my russet brown and my olive green, my gutter grime color, and my Gnoll pelt, and my Osirian sand. And I'm just kind of going back and forth and kind of mixing and mixing until I get something I want, and then I put it on the model. I think brass was pretty standard for fixtures on blades anyway. Brass or bronze, depending on the age. Yeah, I agree with that, Cornico. That's why I'm not terribly afraid to do it. I think it needs to get out there. I've wanted to have kind of a series like this for a while. But I also don't want to like necessarily like target my $2, although it will go up on $2. I don't want to target people there and say, you guys are all beginners, because that's not always true. So I still want to offer some more interesting things to the $2 level. So I just decided to do this as kind of an extra bit. And we'll see how it goes. The challenge is always to give value without undermining other content. So that's why I want to do these as very short. They're not going to like be quite as exhaustive. They're going to be very focused. That is my goal anyway. That's the intent. So I'm bringing in, I actually put a drop of brown liner into my brown to bring it down a little bit. And now we've got more of a setup triad. This makes more sense now. And now we're going to come in with this as a highlight on this fur. And now I will actually turn the model around and get in a comfortable position with my brush and try to actually hit the various parts of the mane with this highlight instead of just using the side of my brush. You could continue to do the side of your brush if you really wanted to. It'll give you a less precise result. So it's all about if you really want to bring out these little bits of fur, which again we might just repaint anyway, or if you want to just kind of get her done and have it look okay. But when you're doing this little fur, these little bits of fur, make sure you've got a lot of paint cleared off of your brush. You want very little paint on your brush. Unload a lot. I'm also using slightly thicker paint for these highlights, which means that even a little bit will go a long way, which helps. So all I have to do is, you know, hit it a little bit and it'll have very striking color on it. But yeah, considering how drab his fur will be, it makes sense to have him have a little bit of a brighter sash. Maybe we'll block that in today so that we can work on the mane also. So, all right, FaceTime. So we want to definitely bring the highlights up on the face. I'm going to be doing little tiny stipples here to try to hit these little bits of fur. I want to have a lighter circle around his eyes if I can, both because canids and other, you know, wild animals do tend to have a lighter color around their eyes, and because it will draw attention to his face. And except for the muzzle, the faces on those gnolls were generally lighter. The photo references that I pulled up. So I feel pretty good about making the face lighter. I may even glaze with this lighter color, which will make it a greener face. But it will also accentuate it and pull the eye up toward it. Because the muzzle is going to be dark, it's hard to pull the attention up when you've got a lot of dark on the face unless you also put a lot of light on the face. Then you've got contrast and that will attract the eye. There we go. So again, always get that little shelf right under the eye on animals, especially because most animals have dark eyes. Again, putting contrast in here by putting some light around them is going to help bring out details. Now let's get some black and put in that muzzle, or dark. We don't necessarily need a real black. We just need dark. You could also use a bluish black if you want, which will contrast. The closest black that I have near to hand here is either Death Knight black or brown liner. So I think I'm actually going to mix those. Put 2 drops of Death Knight and 1 drop of brown liner. I used to do this a lot. I would mix brown and blue liners to get a more of a neutral liner. There. Yo, Val. I don't know. I was just aiming for traditional Gnoll, which would be greenish brown. And then I'm going to adjust it until I like the color more. So let's put the dark muzzle on him. And of course we did his mouth dark. So we're going to have to come in there and pick out those teeth and stuff. There. Isn't his name something like Black something? Black Hook. He has... Well, he's not going to have a black hook. Sorry. I agree on the steel. Yeah, because of the off feet. Well, unfortunately, we will take that down a bit. If we wanted to, we could do this entire side of the Gnoll that color, which would make more sense, but we've already kind of gone away from that, so I do not think the paw will stay, much as you might like the look of it, Kernico. Hi, Coos. Alrighty. Just gonna keep lightening up some of this facial area. Still kind of spiky from the fur. I am going to do a light glaze. So now let's get our lighter green. This is going to be a more challenging glaze because when you use light colors with glazes, light colors want to cover. And so it's a challenge sometimes to get a light color to work in an even glaze. So I added a brushful of water, then I added a drop just like I did with our brown. I'm going to see how that works. Yeah, sorry, Grinico. Because I really like his paws, and I don't want to give him black feet. I think that his feet have really good detail, and so I don't want to make... If I make them black, you're not gonna see that cool detail, like the slices and the scars on his skin there. Don't really want to do that, I think. I mean, you can if you want to. But the reason I wouldn't do it is because I actually like the detailing on the feet, and I don't want to bury it. You paint things black either because it makes sense. You're painting a black tire, or you're painting a black cloak on a vampire or whatever. Or you paint things black to bury them, to make nobody look at them. When you paint boots black, you're essentially saying, hey, don't look down here. These feet aren't very interesting. You change that if they're very fancy boots by making them super shiny and putting about punchy highlights on them to bring out the details, then, you know. But one reason to paint something black is to bury it. And so if I painted one foot black, I'd essentially be saying, I'm trying to bury this detail because it can't be shiny. It's fur. Yeah, I mean, we could like really tarnish down the steel hook. If we do metallics, that's actually pretty easy. Oh, sloth face. That's a cute sloth face. All right, let me see here. I need white because I want some highlights on this muzzle because it's annoying me that I can't see anything. One sec. Let me throw some pure white into my liner. Doo-doo. Victory noise. Highlight mixed. That's true. They're slow, so they'd be dirty again before they were done cleaning themselves. Poor sloths. Cannot win. And I'm going to mix up some pure white just because I'm going to want it here and there, probably. Ah, I probably shouldn't have thinned it that much because I was silly. Oh well. What are a couple more drops of pure white? Nah. Let's see here. Poor sloths. Alrighty. Trying to figure out what my first cookie, because it's holiday now. It's the holiday season officially. So that means it's baking time. It's cookie time. What is the first type of cookie I should make for the holidays? What do you guys think? I've been thinking about this kind of halfway because I'm also writing a novel, but I'm still thinking about it. And when the weekend comes, I will have time to bake. So I'm trying to figure out cookies. Yeah. Yeah, I do holiday cookies a lot. I love to bake cookies all through the holiday season. So I'm trying to figure out what my first type of cookie, what is my first batch of cookies going to be? I usually do, because I'm always open to try something new. I do Russian tea cakes, which some people know as Mexican wedding cakes. Those are usually closer to Christmas, but they're fair at any time of year because they're super tasty. I do, I haven't done snickerdoodles for a while. I do butter cookies. I've done like pecan sandy kind of things that are dipped in chocolate. And of course, the cookie cutter cookies have to wait till closer to Christmas. Mint, but I'm not into, actually, I hate mint chocolate chip. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Zero. I also do a holiday spice cookie, a holiday spice sugar cookie, and sometimes I put spiced rum frosting on them. So those are also in the shortbread cookies. I haven't done shortbread for a long time, Asherman. I should try that. Or I should say Sherman. Mexican wedding cookies first, yeah, because they're so tasty, right? I do kick butt Mexican wedding cookies. Like, Ed would even hold me up on this one because he actually asked me to make a batch for him one Christmas to gift to somebody in his family who loved Mexican wedding cookies. So Ed has a high opinion of my Mexican. The head of Reaper has a high opinion of my Russian tea cake / Mexican wedding cooking recipe. I'm just going to put a little bit of like little wrinkles here, I think, on top of his snout to suggest that snarliness. Well, that's a little better. Probably need to paint the interior of the mouth to make it come out. Yeah, well, I think almost every Christmas cookie does well in the freezer. My mom always made them early and froze them, and I always snuck them and ate them because I love frozen cookies. I think that's freezing actually improves certain things. There we go. So there's that glaze on top of the head. See how it lightens everything up? But when we take out that excess, just remember, don't let it pool. It's going to dry really weird if you let it pool. So take the tip of your brush and kind of slurp off the excess before it dries. But it's still going to leave that lighter layer, and you can still see the texture. Custard creams. I'm not familiar with those. Oatmeal cranberry. That's a good idea, Roger. I love my Danish butter cookies. Like, butter cookies are one of my favorite things. And mine tend to taste a little bit more like almond because so they almost taste like marzipan because I use almond flour since I'm going low carb. All right, let's get this face a little bit. I've got that one glaze. That helped a lot. Let's bring up his mouth a little bit. Let's use my favorite color for this is always deep red. Always, always, always. If I have to mix a mouth color. You can add a little brown into it and a little white, and it comes up, when you add white to it, it comes up into a great mouth, lip, blush color. So there's deep red right out of the bottle, but when you add some white to it, it really makes a pretty color. It's a good dark pink, so for the inside of a mouth, it's good. And because it has some blue and violet in it, and I think a tiny bit of black, but maybe it's just blue and violet. But it grays out, it mutes out just a little bit, so it's a very natural color. And then if I add just a little bit of my brown, And that's how you make a mouth color, by the way, guys, is you just add a little bit of brown to pink. It'll make it look fleshier. Interesting. I should look in my... I also have the Great British Baking Show's cookbook. Baking book, rather. So I should probably look in there and see if there's anything dangerous that I can do. Oh, meringue. Yeah. I remember my mom used to do those, and they were like her favorite, but they were the least favorite of everybody else in the family. It's deep red. It's a fantastic red. It's one of my favorites. It's actually the second color in the whole line, right? So who looks at those beginning colors anymore? But 9002 is a great, great color if you're making mouth colors, lip colors, blush colors, any of that. If you mix a little bit of this with your skin tone, it makes fantastic lip and blush colors for almost any skin tone. It's just really good. It's just so sweet. Meringue. Although I did hand whip egg whites the other day. There's his mouth, his little tongue. Let's get the upper part of his mouth. And this, even though this is a very dark pink, it looks very light. Look at how it's really like, it's interacting really great with that fur tone though, right? Because now we've got pink and green. It actually looks fantastic. So I'm going to try to get some of that pink in to show on the side here. I want to make sure we get the edge of his tongue. He's like, the better to eat you with, little girl. Nom, nom. Yes, yes, Quindy, exactly. Exactly. I decided I have to make my mom's really difficult cookie cutter cookies this year, though, because David's parents are coming for Christmas. And I love my mom's cookie cutter cookies. The recipe is fantastic. It's a bit different. The dough has like sour cream in it for it to give it that kind of acidic tang. It's just really different. They're really good cookie cutter cookies. Like I never bother with anybody else's cookie cutter cookies because they're just never as good. But because of the sour cream, they get really sticky, so they're hard to work with. The dough is hard to work with when you're doing it, so I usually don't make them much as I love them. But if people are coming, then that's an excuse to have some nice decorated cookies. He looks so friendly now that he's got his little tongue sticking out. I don't know. He's still got the kind of frowny brows, so I'm trying to put a little white highlight on his tongue. A little white highlight at the tip. Yeah, there we go. There. So yeah, that pink actually worked out really well. And if we really wanted to, this actually would make a good faded red. So if we were painting his sash dark red, we could use deep red and use this color to highlight it, and it would essentially be like a dark red that has faded. When you add like when you gray out reds, that makes them really good for that. Oh, he totally needs a Christmas sweater. That would be great. Only if we do metallics, Varl. If we do metallics, then we can... Although remember, when you gloss something, you are essentially wiping out any detail work you do. So, like, taking the time to do that little highlight on the end of his tongue, if I gloss this, that's going to disappear. Because then any light that hits the tongue is going to randomly reflect whatever it decides to, depending on the direction. So remember that about gloss. Gloss, can give you that effect. But if you do any nice little highlights or small highlights like I did there, the gloss is going to essentially make those useless. Of course, an ugly Christmas sweater. I did some wet blending in the beginning on it, on the arm, D-Sparrow, and then I went back in and I layered in more shadows. And then on the arm, I actually did a fur texture. Up here, I'm mostly picking out fur, but I'm going in to also like add more shadows in between the clumps of fur. Yep. You can totally wet blend this kind of fur, and it is honestly the easiest way to do kind of clumpy fur like this. Because then, I mean, a wet blend is super easy. Let's do it on his tail. Throw a bunch of color of a dark variety onto the surface first. Don't want a ton of it. You don't want it floating on there, but you want it wet. Then pick your highlight color, in this case, a happy green, and start adding it in. Since I thinned my green, it's not like mixing quite as well, but as you can see, it will just kind of mix. This essentially allows you to establish, you know, a general overall light and dark on your fur before you come back to pull out the details. Yeah, I'm all for giving this Gnoll an ugly Christmas sweater, but sadly I don't have a Gnoll-sized one. So we just keep adding in. If this paint was not thin, I thinned it in order to layer with it, but if it was not thinned, we would be getting bigger results on our wet blending faster. But it just kind of lets you create a smooth blended highlight without a lot of work on a very textured surface. And I'll keep adding in more light color if I feel like I'm not quite overwhelming that brown like I want to. There, it's a little better. That just gives you a little bit of basic highlight and shade very quickly. I still would come in and pick out the fur. Might come in with a little bit of a lighter color at this point. Because I still like to pick out details. There we go. That's a little better. So obviously, as you can see, because I just added in a near white there, the more difference between the colors when you're wet blending, the more difference between the two colors, the light and the dark, the more cool effect you'll get, the more dramatic of a difference you'll get. So, but I still would go back in and pick out various areas. Let's get his teeth. I want to get his teeth. What do I want to use for the teeth? I want to use something yellowy. Let's start out with desert sand and highlight with Osirian sand. In the absence of stained ivory, desert sand is probably one of my go-tos for that. I do have yellowed bone as well. This one's more brown, this one's more yellow. Maybe I'll do a combo. We'll do a drop of one and a drop of the other. We'll do 50-50. Alrighty, let's put a drop of water in that. We probably don't even need to come up to pure white on those teeth because in that black muzzle, any light color we use, it's going to pop out really fast. I'm also going to use the white to pick out his eyes, even though the eyes are going to be dark, and they're still going to be dark, but I might use kind of an amber color on them, or a red-orange or something, especially if we decide to go red-orange with the sash and the mane. Getting that face in there really makes him come to life, though, doesn't it? All right, now I need to find those teeth. There we go. And I don't want the teeth to be huge globs. I want them to stand out, but I don't want... I want them to be a little more subtle. Because they're going to stand out anyway. Oh, that blobbed a little bit. It's okay if you blob a little bit. You can always touch it up. I'm pretty sure more treats is probably, yeah, probably very motivational for him. Like the call of more treats, more booty. His booty is treats. Although he may have rebelled against the ugly Christmas doggy sweater and decided to go turn to a life of piracy instead. I'm pretty sure a Gnoll, trying to raise a Gnoll puppy counts as exotic wildlife, right? Invasive wildlife clauses. You would probably like get served. Somebody would call the animal control on you. The monster control division of your local city or town. Don't you know there's got to be that in those big cities? Like Waterdeep totally needs to have a monster control division. If they don't, like, sir, my next door neighbor is raising a hippogriff and it's very loud all through the night. And so, you know, they come and they impound your hippogriff because it's, you know, an illegal monster to own. Don't you think that makes sense? Like, can't you see it? Like, because there would be people, it's like Hagrid, right? People keeping monsters that they really oughtn't. People who keep iguanas and then look horrified when they're 6 feet long. And terrorizing their children. You know, that kind of thing. That needs to be a thing. I should just start keeping a list of, like, Anne's Fantasy City. The weird things that exist. But cities like Waterdeep, where they're high magic and they're run by, like, wizards and there's all sorts of, like, high-level adventurers in them, like, those cities totally need to have those laws. You know it. You know every half-arsed, you know, 12th level wizard thinks he can control a whatever. Yes, right. See? Terrible idea, Crows. Terrible idea. Well, then they need to, like, go away and have a better life and not be tied to, like, being the monster pet of idiots. Thormel. In my personal opinion. Look at all the trouble with bad dog owners. Like, can you imagine a bad, like, I don't know, think of a terrible, a bad Lucrata owner. Who would own one of those anyway? The same sort of people who own the ugliest dog on the planet, right? Would want one of those. Like, there's probably an underground, like, fashion monster owning club where the rich and, you know, powerful, like, show off their latest acquisitions. And there'd be, like, this, like, black market in baby monsters. Putting a little bit extra. Yeah, poor blink dogs. Hard to keep a blink dog if it doesn't want to be kept, though. I would imagine. Unless you put a collar on it that meant that it couldn't teleport, and then you definitely need to get impounded, you know. You need to get your blink dog taken away, because it's probably miserable. Blink dog's gotta blink, man. Yeah, humans could just screw up baby monsters so bad. You think you'd love to have an awakened shrub until it ate you. You think so. I'm sure Waterdeep needs those laws. Like, that kind of city needs those laws. Like, the amount of times that the Lords of Waterdeep have to privately facepalm and then send somebody to collect the latest terrible monster that's been hatched / raised by X clueless wizard. Like, seriously. You know it's a thing. I actually wrote a short story about that one time. About science fiction, though. About essentially a group of, like, kind of religious fanatics who, like, went around, like, taking in, rescuing, like, alien beasts that were kept by rich people who then couldn't care for them. Because you know what would happen. Like, more cute animals that you really oughtn't to own just means more dumb pet owners. You know, yeah. There's always one of those in the party. That's why you know it's a thing. Because so many of our adventuring parties have tried that. So you know it's a thing. You know that is exactly what would happen if there were monsters. Oops, a little bit of a blorf there on the side of the eye. So I'm going to put white over the eye. It's not going to be a white eye, but I am going to at least make them stand out a little bit more so. Well, that's not necessarily true, Thormel. It depends on if the monster has the proper genes to be domesticated in the first place. Because remember, people have been trying to domesticate zebras forever, but zebras are freaking wild, and they would like you to know that there is no way they are going to stop trying to, like, pummel you with their hooves and bite you. And no way in heck are you ever going to get to ride one. Like, that's for reals. So I would personally, being a genetics kind of person, there's no reason that magical monsters also don't have genetics. So there are some monsters you just could not tame. And yes, those would probably end up having to be captured and re-released into the wild or just done away with, depending on how dangerous they are. But yes, it would be pretty funny to have... Actually, it would be pretty funny to have the equivalent of a wild... We have a wild parrot population in San Francisco. And they will, you know, like, move into people's yards every once in a while. Some of them. You know, because it's a pretty big flock. It's a couple hundred birds, I think. So you would totally, like, have to figure out, like, the equivalent of that for Waterdeep, and it would be a nuisance. Small flying monsters that band together. It would be cool to make them like fey cats with wings. And you have, instead of a stray cat population, you have a stray fey cat population. They live in a gigantic flock, and they're a complete nuisance. Oh yeah, Carrie, those people. Yes, yes. Us DMs, you know, we appreciate you because you're not just trying to kill everything. But at the same time, it gets old. There are some monsters that are just not going to talk to you. They do not buy it. They do not buy your, but we're perfectly rational beings, and can't we just all get along? Like, yeah, some monsters look at you and they just kind of disbelieve because they can see the slaughtered trail of entities behind you. There we go. Now his face is really coming out. Look at that. Rawr. That's good. Well, your dinner, or you're just like, they can smell the monster you killed like 300 feet back down the hall. You know? Seriously, monsters aren't necessarily dumb here. It's like, you're on the 3rd level of the dungeon. The monsters look at you. You try to make friends. The monsters wonder what happened to all their friends on levels 1 and 2, and they just don't buy it. Because, you know, the question those monsters, if they're at all smart, have to ask themselves is, okay, if we let you go, what happens? You know, there's consequences to every action. Some monsters might just be cowardly and looking to get out of a fight, but if you are near their babies, you also have to wonder if the monsters are going to maybe decide not to let you through. Like, yes, dungeon preserves. I like that idea. Isn't there a video game that kind of went... No, the video game was like you were evil and raising monsters, I think. I don't remember. But yeah, having the... dungeon preserves would be kind of fun. Although it sounds like they would have to sell jam in their gift shop. Gotta raise money somehow, right? It's too good a pun to walk away from. All right, so I'm going to bring up some of this fur over here. I do want to get all of the main painted green just in case we decide not to go with a different color up here. Also because, you know, I need all the rest of this fur painted, even if we decide to do the crest over in a reddish color to make him look more like echo back to more of his hyena heritage. I'm pretty sure you'd have to be at least a 6th level wizard to intern there. Unless they, like, give you magic items to, like, keep the mimics at bay. It would be something like, in order to qualify to get into the Wizards dinner club, you'd have to put in a semester of time or a year serving as an intern. Have to make the reward like worth it. Speaking of which, actually, on that note, there is an excellent new novel series out. There are 2 books in it. The second ends on a real cliffhanger, so I will warn you. But you could read the first one and still enjoy it. And it's by Naomi Novik, who wrote the His Majesty's Dragon series. But it's called A Deadly Education, or A Very Deadly Education, I think. It's like if you put Harry Potter in a magical, extra-dimensional school that's trying to kill you. It's a female protagonist, it's really fun. It's a super fast read. It's super fun. The world is awesome. And the main character is fantastic. So I heartily recommend. It's probably my most enjoyed book in the last year. Like Jurassic Park, but with slimes. But slimes aren't nearly cute enough. I mean, slimes can be cute when they're babies. But I don't know. I think you need something to be cute first. And slimes have dubious cuteness among certain people. I think baby slimes are cute, but there are definitely cuter monsters. And I'm going to come in with just a bit, mixing in a little bit actually of my tooth color, which is kind of an off-white, into my green to bring out a little bit more of detail on these. And the thicker the paint you use here, the more solid a highlight you're going to get. So you maybe only have to go over it once, but also the little bit harder it is to get it to come off the brush sometimes. So you need to hit the kind of sweet spot. But you can see how picking out the layers of fur here now are bringing out the details, right? Book recommendation was, I believe it's A Very Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Super, super fun. There we go. So just bringing in a little bit more highlight here. So even when fur is kind of sculpted, you know, as it often, fur at 28 millimeters often kind of clumpy like this. And it's just the way that is best to kind of depict fur at this scale often, I think. And so this is kind of like putting a little extra time into it can make it look really good, even when he's a mangy, clumpy gnoll. So just because it's fur doesn't mean it can't look good. It just takes a little extra time to do it. Yeah, definitely do, Jedi Druid. It's like baby wizards like send off these signals that call monsters to like eat them, and because they're so tasty and defenseless. And so the wizards cooked up a scheme to make this extra dimensional school where they could protect their kids by sinking a ton of magic into it and taking it outside of regular space. But the problem is that it broke. And so the monsters get in, and essentially your life is like an endless trial of trying to stay alive while you learn enough spells to enable you to keep staying alive. It's a really cool book. Trust me, it's a really cool book. Oh yeah, Sandman. I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan. My favorite book by him is Neverwhere, Desparrow. And I did read all the Sandman. I own them all, actually. All of the Sandman. I have the complete series in the gigantic books. The funniest thing was being at a signing with Neil, and the people ahead of me like brought those gigantic books, which I owned, but I did not bring because my favorite Neil Gaiman book is an entirely different. The Neil Gaiman book I wanted signed was an entirely different book. But Neil was like, I feel so sad for those people bringing those huge heavy books and having to wait in line for hours carrying the huge heavy books. Neil is a nice guy. Or seems to be. Naomi Novik. Naomi Novik, Novik. I had read the first one of His Majesty's Dragon series, the Temeraire series, and liked it, but it was good, but it wasn't like enough to make me like seek out her other books. But having now read this book, I think she's definitely improved as a writer over the years, and I need to seek out some of her other stuff now. It's Reaper John. Like I say, just like I say in the intro, guys, every once in a while we'll get a different set or a new set or a John-shaped set of disembodied hands. I'm always happy when we have all 3 sets of disembodied hands on deck. Just in case, you know. In case things get a little crazy around here. I'm going to come in here and touch up this side of his face again. Now that I've got some of these lighter colors mixed. Rawr. Yeah, his face is really not. Remember when his face was just a blob of darkness? And now we can see his face. Sweet. I want to get a little bit more around the eye on both sides. And then maybe a little bit more glazing. A little bit of highlighting around the eye will make it come out even more. There we go. Going to grab a little bit on the bottom of that face, a little bit of highlight just to make sure that it's defined. And we do have earrings here on Mr. Gnoll too. So I'll come in and highlight those in a second. And we've managed to still make him look furry. You really can't. You'd have to just brand. Yeah, break and burn. We talked about that actually. The last time we painted Gnoll, because fur, you know, you wouldn't see any tattoos under the fur. You'd have to have scarification instead to take the fur completely out and just replace it with a scar. But I happen to like him looking furry, so I'm going to keep that. There. I feel like that eyeball, I need to touch up these eyeballs a little bit. Then I want to actually underpaint these earrings so I don't forget them. There. Alrighty, so I'm going to grab some of my liner that I mixed up and I'm going to paint over these earrings in his ears. I'll probably put a base coat just of white. That is definitely, I think that's a clump of fur, and this is an earring, and this is an earring. And this one also has 2 earrings. So I'm just going to bring in some white because the ears are going to be dark. So I want to make sure that those earrings don't get forgotten. And one way to do that is just to throw a quick white undercoat on them. Just a little bit to make sure that they stand out. And they remind you to paint them. And if you, like me, construct a list of things to do on a model when you get near the end, this will hopefully remind you that you need to actually put some paint on these. I like this Gnoll. I'm glad I chose him. I wanted to paint a Gnoll anyway when you guys said you wanted more humanoids, so this is a good Gnoll. Nice and simple, so it's not going to take us super long to paint him, but he's also got just some cool details. Let's get the other ones. For some weird reason, I woke up today thinking it was much later in the week. Like, I'm like, oh, I can't do this because it's too late in the week. And I'm like, Anne, it's only Tuesday. What are you thinking? I don't know what got into my brain. There we go. Ears, 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 ears. Good. All right. We've got a really good good face going on here. I'm going to drop a little bit of pink into those ears. Normally, animal ears, especially wild animal ears, they've got a lot of fur growing around them. You really don't see the pink skin inside the ear. You do on some dogs. But since I have these huge ears here and I want to make them a little bit more interesting, I am going to put just a little bit of pink in there. And if I end up not liking it, I can totally paint over it or around it to minimize it. And then we're going to do the ears dark. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We'd do a reddish crest on this guy, but we'll see. Could be a dye job or just his natural hair color. There we are. Now let's do what we did on Big Gnolly and get dark inside that ear. And I also need a white highlight on the tip of that nose. Boop. Come on, Ollie. Give me just a little bit. A little bit of highlight. All I want is just a little bit of highlight. Yeah, there we go. Boom. Got a little bit, maybe too much there, but... All right. So I'm going to use my liner color to kind of get the edges of these ears, or just inside the edges. Kind of some dark. And I can decide, like, do I want the ear to be dark here? Let's block in a dark shadow on the inside here, close to the top of the head. That'll make the ear stand out a little bit when it is coming up against the fur on the top of the head. And we can still highlight the outer edge to bring out the details. So some pink, a dark shadow, and that's looking good. I think that's pretty good. I think I want to bring in, I'll split up that fur chunk a little bit. There. All right, so now I can bring in a little bit of highlight around the edge of that ear. Make it a little lighter and make it stand out. There. There we go. Sweet. Now we can see the shapes of his ears a little bit better. Which is nice. Grab a little bit more pale color from my bone, my teeth color, mixing it into my Gnoll hide. There. That really makes it stand out better. See those ears now? Good, 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 good. Excellent. Kind of looking at the top down, I'm going to bring out some of this fur a little bit more. I've got a little bit of a lighter color on my brush. There we are. I've got to repaint this area real quick. This tuft of fur got a little bit clumpy and muddy. There. And there's some fur here. All right. That is, that's coming along. We need to figure out the back of the ears. Back of the ears can probably, I've got 7 minutes. So I can do some dark color on the back of the ears. Let me go brown. And I think I want to go have a little bit of dark in there. So I'm grabbing my liner color and my russet brown, and I'm just kind of darkening down the back of the ear a bit. And then we can come in with a little bit of highlighting, just with our, do a little fur texture. Just do little lines going out if you can, or just little dots if you can't. The hair on the ears is really short, so if you want some texture, you've got to introduce it. Let's see here. Don't really have a dark thing to hold this up against. You can see the edges. And I want maybe a little bit more, just around the tops. There. Oh, maybe got a little bit crazy on that side. Take that down a little bit. There. What do you guys think? Yes? Very Gnollish. Let me cover up this and see if the colors read right. The colors are reading right. That's good. The color on the Gnoll's body and face matches the foot, as opposed to our very green foot that we did at the beginning and decided we did not want that green of a Gnoll. And he also is looking very brown, isn't he? Like he's, now that we've introduced more browns into him, he's greenish still, but he's not like green. So I'm pretty happy with what we did today. So what we did, we we switched up our colors a little bit. We added in a little more brown to take down some of this area. We glazed the face to bring it up after we highlighted it. So we talked about glazing. We talked about fur texture. And kind of, we showed really quick kind of a wet blend, a quick wet blend on fur. We talked a bit about other colors that we might use if we wanted to bring in like a reddish sash and a reddish crest on his head, or even since we used this kind of a dark rose color for his tongue, we could even do a faded red sash if we wanted to go hardcore into the red-green combination. Yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy. We also decided, I think, that we're going metallics on this one. That was the majority vote at the end of the day. We talked about cookies. Yes, cookies, very important, holiday cookies. So that is what we did today. Thanks, Julie. I'm glad you like him. I think he's very charismatic sculpt. So tomorrow, what we are working on is Mr. Ogre. We've got our shadows pretty much blocked in now, so I think it's time to probably refine those a little bit because the back still isn't reading quite right to me. So we'll talk about when you've got light sourcing that's gone awry, because the front is reading very well, but the back is just everywhere. I just threw shadows all over the place, and I'm not real happy with it. So we'll talk about correcting that and how to think about it. And we may start on some highlighting with Mr. Ogre. We may actually add some reddish tones into his skin too to bring a little bit more life to him. So yeah, that's what we will be doing tomorrow, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. What show do we have next? Ah, yes, Crow's Nest. Your guess is as good as mine. Awesome. All right, well, cool. Thank you, everyone. I hope that your Tuesday is coming together and that you have a lovely one, and we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and shiny, or afternoonish or eveningish, not so bright and shiny. See y'all later. Bye-bye.